やっほーん PPTV をご覧の皆さん、こんにちは、あしゃです。今日はあっちゃんなんでいきなり日本語を使いましたか？そう、今日は日本についての話をしたいと思います。もっと詳しく言うと、日本の有名のオーディオ電子ジャイアントソニーのウォークマンの歴史についてをちょっと話したいと思います。それでは、レッツスタート!
Take a cassette out of its case, and most people just see an empty box. But Sony saw something quite different.
Okay, that's it for the Japanese. Today we are going to be talking about the precursor to all audio players. Heck, some might even say the precursor to all portable technology, the original Sony Walkman. We'll be throwing back all the way to 1978, and we'll be talking a little bit about the weirdness that gave birth to the Walkman, the weirdness that a Walkman gave birth to, as well as some 1978 first world problems that nearly prevented the Walkman from descending upon us the way it has. So, without further ado, let's start. See, back in the 70s, modern mobile technology wasn't really a thing. Everyone either just bought a television set, invested in a nice stereo, or camped out by the radio for serialized stories. The closest you'd get to a portable device was a pocket transmission radio, equipped with a speaker that you could use to share your tunes with the world. A world that probably didn't appreciate your taste in music. But all that was about to change, with two people by the name of Masaru Ibuka and Akio Morita, who founded a little company you might have heard of called Sony. According to Matt Alt's book Pure Innovation, the two found themselves in a bit of a pickle in the summer of 1978. That was the day when Masaru Ibuka strode into his business partner Morita's office with a portable stereo and a pair of full-size headphones on his head. Morita asked him what on earth he was doing. Okay, picture this. Ibuka's equipment of choice that day was one of Sony's most portable stereo players at the time, and that was the field recorder, the TCD5. It was about the size of a cereal box, and it was so heavy that it had to be carried by an equally heavy nylon bag or a nylon strap. And what he had on his head were a pair of full-size earphones, a pair of clunky full-size earphones. Now, earphones back then weighed about 400 grams. Nowadays, even the heavier Bluetooth earphones weigh about 6 grams per side, so you can sort of work out the math yourself. Ibuka probably didn't look especially elegant. He finally explained, "Well, I want to listen to music, but I can't possibly stay in my office and camp out by my stereo all day, and I don't really want to trouble others to listen to what I'm listening to, but it's heavy." Morita took a look at his partner and he put two and two together. He remembered the boomboxes he saw in New York City, and he decided that number one, people wanted to take their music around. Number two, Ibuka wanted to listen to his own music in peace. And henceforth, the idea of a portable cassette player was born. Luckily, Sony already had the perfect base for this product, the 1978 TCM100 Sony Pressman Field Recorder. It could both record and playback sounds in mono. Unfortunately, to fulfill Morita's vision, every single function that was inessential to music playback had to be axed. This included the internal speaker as well as the recording microphone. This was disastrous internally. Sony staff were not happy. Who on earth would want a player without a recording feature or a portable player without a pair of speakers in it? And most of all, who would want to go out of the house wearing a pair of really clunky earphones on their head? And when the end product finally emerged, it didn't win any extra points. It was peculiar looking, to say the least. It was about the size of a paper bag, so it wasn't actually small enough to fit into any pockets and had to be clipped onto a belt or onto a bag instead. Another oddity was that Morita, after considering how isolating and soul-crushing listening to music alone was, included not one, but two earphone jacks in what would become the new Walkman. It also came with a mute button for the music called the hotline, so you could push on it and it would mute your music so you could talk to whoever was listening with you. It was novel, to say the least, maybe a little bit too novel because no one in the office wanted to sign off on this gadget. And Ibuka and Morita didn't make any effort to push it through as well. But after the prototype stood in the offices for a while, Morita finally organized a focus group of 100 students. He took about 5 of the prototypes and loaded them up with songs from the era and gave it to the students for testing. He found two things. Number one was that it was pretty intuitive. The students that held on to the Sony Walkmans knew immediately what to do with them. And number two, they got lost in the music really quickly. Now, slightly more encouraged, Sony finally decided to settle on a production number based on the number of students in Japan. Morita thought that the Walkman could perhaps sell around 60k before the novelty finally faded. He also aimed to launch the machine right before the summer holidays in order to capitalize on the student crowd. Unfortunately, this genius idea of Morita's left the Walkman with only 3 months of production left, as well as a whole host of limitations and manufacturing issues, which Sony tackled by further cutting down its first run by half. So we have ended up with 30,000 units. For some context, Sony's Titantron TVs were running up to millions in production every year, so you know how unconfident they felt about the whole thing. Now that the player had been more or less settled, that left Sony with the problem of the earphones. See, in 1978, earphones weren't all that big. I mean, they were big, but they were not popular. Yes, pilots and telegram operators had to use earphones, but that was because it was their job. They were hot, they were very heavy, and no one was going to wear them of their own free will. Maybe aside from a little group in Japan that they called audio maniacs, but those people were hardly trendsetters in society. So the Walkman may have been portable, but they needed a pair of equally portable headphones to go with it. That was when Sony created the MDR3L2, a pair of stripped-down earphones that was easier to produce and cheaper to produce to boot. These earphones sat on top of the user's ears instead of swallowing them whole in sponge and silicone. They also weighed 50 grams, down from the 400 grams that earphones weighed in the past. This move was what finally took the Walkman from dream to reality. The product was eventually called the Walkman TPS-L2 in Japan, which was an intuitive name that told the user exactly what the product was. It opened finally in a gala event in Yoyogi Park in 1979 to 0 headlines. This was followed by a mildly terrifying advertising campaign. But what did happen is that people eventually did start noticing the Walkman after the first month of disappointing sales, and the newspapers quickly picked up on this new trend. The Walkman had finally flown. So you know the rest of the story. Sony eventually sold 400 million units across their Walkman lineup before finally retiring the player in 2010. Since then, the Walkman name has disappeared from the earth, but we know otherwise. We know that the Walkman is a precursor to the music players and the beloved DAPs that we see today, of which Sony's WM1A and WM1Z are two very popular choices, with the WM in their model names standing for the once ubiquitous Walkman name. On a slightly related note, the pair of earphones that came out with the Walkman were also groundbreaking. Sony designer Yasuo Kuroki, upon listening to the earphones, asked, "How could something so tiny produce such powerful sound?" This is a question that earphone manufacturers are still answering today. Last but not least, the two earphone jacks found in the Sony Walkman were the first instances of the now extremely popular 3.5mm earphone jacks. What was so special about them that they eventually dominated the market for the next 40 years and counting? It was probably the fact that Sony actually gave out these design licenses for free. Anyone who wanted to use it could just ask, and they would have the right to use it. Today, the 4.4mm earphone jack that we are seeing in DAPs are also a Sony invention. A search on the net today will yield a couple of different stories regarding the conception of the Sony Walkman. One of them will involve Akio Morita laying his job on the line. "If this thing doesn't succeed, I'm going to resign." Another one might involve Masaru Ibuka contemplating his inability to listen to music on a business flight. But the proliferation of these stories about the Walkman has cemented its status in our society as modern folklore. And the wave of inventions it has made possible, from earphones to DAPs to streaming, are here to stay. So this was Ash from PBTV. Please like and subscribe if you like our content. We'll probably be putting out a little bit more of these history story time videos in the near future. So if there's any topics you'd like us to delve into, please put them in the comments. Our social media is in the description as well as our website, and I hope you have a wonderful day ahead. Bye bye!
The incredible sounding Super Walkman.